The chapel went silent when my mother's voice sliced through the air. You changed your name. Not a question. An accusation. Every person turned to look. My father's fingers gripped the program tighter. My brother froze in the doorway, his smile vanishing. I found my seat in the second row, the program still warm in my hand, my new name printed in bold black letters. The chair next to me, the one marked for family, sat empty. Just like every important moment they had missed before. But as I stared at that vacant space, something inside me changed. They believed today would show everyone I was wrong. They had no idea it would reveal the truth about them. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, stay with me, because this story might sound familiar. Growing up in our Denver home, I learned to make myself small. Noise meant you mattered in our house, and I never made enough noise. My mother's shoes clicked urgently across the floor whenever Marcus needed something. It was always louder, faster, more important than anything I required. Amber always received the gentle voice, the warm hands on her shoulders, the kind of attention that made everyone notice her. I was the quiet daughter who cleaned up after herself, made her own lunch, and figured out early not to interrupt conversations that flowed around me like I wasn't there. The first time I really understood the pattern, I was 12. Amber had an art show at school. Paintings lined the gymnasium walls. My mother stood beside her, smiling at neighbors, fixing Amber's hair. I stood in the corner holding my certificate from that morning. I had won an award at a regional math competition. Nobody from my family came to see me receive it. They didn't even remember what time it happened. Mom walked past me like I was part of the wall. Hold your sister's bag, she said, pushing it into my arms without looking at me. I folded my certificate and put it in my pocket. The paper crinkled loudly. Nobody heard. Years later, they arrived late to my high school graduation. The ceremony had already started. My row of classmates moved so my family could find seats. When they called my name, I stood and searched the crowd for the 4 faces that should have been there. One chair in the family section sat empty. Mine. My brother and sister had gone to a beach party. My parents were stuck in traffic, though I learned later they had stopped for ice cream. I held the program so hard the corner ripped. I swallowed the hurt and sat down slowly, trying to hide how much the emptiness stung. College wasn't any different. At Berkeley, I sent reminders weeks ahead about an award ceremony for my department. Amber texted back a smiley face. Marcus left the message unread. My parents replied 3 days later saying they would try. They never came. That night, I ate Chinese food alone on the apartment steps, my award still in its envelope beside me. The envelope they never opened. The older I became, the quieter I grew. Fighting back only made Mom say her favorite line. Stop being so dramatic, Hannah. Dad would agree without looking up from his tablet. My complaints got shorter each year until they stopped completely. The memory that stuck with me like a thorn was the presentation where I shared early research about cleaning ocean water. 5 reserved seats, all empty. I held the folded program, pressing the same crease again and again, pretending the hollow space beside me didn't hurt. My phone buzzed with a photo of Marcus grilling burgers at a backyard cookout. Wish you were here, he wrote. He didn't actually mean it. That day taught me exactly where I stood in my family. A quiet spot at the edge of their world, never truly seen unless I stayed silent. And if this story is hitting close to home, do me a favor and hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories. The change didn't happen suddenly. It built slowly, like water pushing against a dam I had kept closed for years. But the day it finally broke seemed ordinary and deceivingly calm. 8 months before my big presentation, I sent the announcement to my family. A clean, official notice from the university with the date and time in sharp black ink. I mailed it to the house in Denver, texted a reminder, and posted it in the family group chat. May 15th, 2 p.m., I wrote. My mother responded hours later with a quick, "So proud, sweetheart." Amber sent a thumbs up. Marcus typed, "Cool." I told myself it was good enough. Through winter, I mentioned the date at every Sunday dinner. Mom nodded without looking up from her phone. Dad mumbled something that might have been yes. Amber talked about her daughter's dance classes. Marcus went on about his new grill. I reminded them anyway. 4 months out. 3 months. 6 weeks. 2 weeks. Each reminder felt like knocking on a window nobody could hear through. Then in March, Marcus posted an invitation online. "Spring cookout blowout," the image said. May 15th, noon to 7 p.m. I stared at the screen until my eyes hurt. When I called him, he sounded genuinely surprised. "What time is your thing again?" he asked, like he hadn't heard it 20 times. 2 o'clock, I said. "People can do both," he replied. "Just come after yours is done." Seattle was 90 minutes away. He knew that. He just didn't care. I called Mom next. She laughed softly. "Honey, don't be so dramatic. We'll figure something out." But I knew right then, with complete certainty, they weren't confused. They weren't too busy. They simply chose something else, someone else, like they always had. The final proof came the day before my presentation. Mom answered over loud music, her voice thin between bursts of laughter. "I'm at Marcus's helping set up," she said. "Total chaos here." "What about tomorrow?" I asked. 2 o'clock, right? "We'll be there," she said, distracted. "Amber's bringing dessert." She hung up before I could say another word. The next afternoon, standing outside Harrison Hall, my phone buzzed. "Where are you?" Mom asked. "We're all at Marcus's place." I didn't answer right away. I let the silence fill the space between us, heavy and final. And in that silence, something inside me locked into place. I didn't cry in the hallway outside Harrison Hall. I didn't call anyone back or try to explain. I gathered my notes, walked into the room, and presented 8 years of work to an audience missing 5 faces that should have been there. When it ended, when "Congratulations, Dr. Hannah Foster" echoed through the chamber, I felt nothing except a familiar ache so deep it had become almost comfortable. That night, while messages from my family piled up unanswered on my phone, I sat alone in my apartment with the curtains half drawn. Light from my desk lamp spread across the table, washing over stacks of research papers, my laptop, and the program from the ceremony. I smoothed its crease one last time. Then I opened my laptop and created a folder called New Start. No drama, no second thoughts, just a folder and the first step toward a life they would no longer control. I began with the basics. I downloaded the name change form from the county website and printed it. The printer's hum in the silent apartment felt strangely calming. Instructions, required documents, identification rules. I highlighted each section with steady strokes. My hand didn't shake once. Next came financial accounts. I logged into each one, changing contact information and saving statements into my new folder labeled Records. I made 2 spreadsheets. One listed every account with my old name. Another showed how each would change under the new one. This wasn't about revenge. It was about order. By midnight, the folder contained more structure than my family had given me in years. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, please subscribe to the channel. It really helps us keep bringing you content like this. The next morning, I woke up early. The air felt cool, and sunlight cut sharp through the blinds. I made coffee, watching the steam rise in slow curves while I reviewed the form one last time. Then I got dressed. Navy shirt, pressed pants, hair pulled back neatly. I drove to the county courthouse. The building stood pale and quiet against the sky. Inside, the clerk pushed a stack of forms toward me. Fill these out, she said. I nodded, found a seat by the window, and started. Line by line, signature by signature, my new name settled into each blank space like it had always belonged there. Hannah Cole. When I handed the papers back, the clerk stamped the top page. The sound was sharp and final. Processing takes a few weeks, she said. That's fine, I replied. Outside, the sun felt different. Clearer. Less like something I had to earn. The next phase took days of quiet work. I updated my email first, creating a clean address with no connection to my family. I moved all my research files to a new cloud account and deleted the old one. I saved messages from colleagues, teachers, and friends. The only thing I kept was a small folder called Grandma K, filled with photos and the birthday card she had mailed me through college. Her handwriting had always looked confident, even when mine shook. By the end of the week, my digital life no longer contained the name Foster. The physical move came next. I packed my apartment. Books stacked neatly. Clothes folded in long rows. Picture frames wrapped in paper and turned face down. I stood in the center of the living room the night before the movers came, listening to the soft hum of the refrigerator and the faint buzz of a streetlight outside. My phone lit up every few minutes. Calls, texts, desperate attempts to grab onto something they had never truly held. I didn't answer. When the truck drove away carrying everything I owned toward Boston, I locked the apartment door and rested my hand on the cool metal for a moment. Not sadness, just stillness. The drive east took 3 days. Long stretches of highway, quiet radio, rest stops with flickering lights. I stopped only for gas and coffee. Each mile felt like thin threads breaking, frayed connections falling away behind me. Boston greeted me with cloudy skies and a light mist. Perfect, I thought. A city where silence didn't feel like punishment but like a way of existing. My new apartment was small but filled with light, with a narrow balcony overlooking a quiet street lined with trees. I set my boxes by the window and opened the one labeled work. Research papers, a notebook, a single photo of me and Grandma K at a long-ago birthday dinner. I pinned it above my desk. The next morning, I walked into the water conservation company that had offered me a job months earlier. The receptionist greeted me warmly. My new coworkers introduced themselves one by one. Nobody asked about my family. Nobody compared me to a brother or sister. I sat at my new desk, logged into my new account, and felt a strange, unfamiliar steadiness settle in my chest. In the evenings, I continued the quiet work. I changed the name on my license, updated my voter registration, replaced my medical records, changed emergency contacts, and closed the last bank account with the old last name. Each task brought its own small sound. Keys tapping, buttons clicking, envelopes tearing softly. Not dramatic, not victorious, but precise, controlled, mine. Some nights I would sit at my desk with the window open slightly, letting cool air drift inside. I would pick up a form, a bill, a document, and feel that familiar tightness in my chest ease just a little. This time, I thought, sliding another page into the completed folder, I won't try to fix what they broke. It wasn't a promise, just a line drawn. Finally written down. The notification arrived on a gray morning weeks after I had settled into Boston. Your name change petition has been approved, it read. A simple sentence. A quiet switch flipped. I printed the confirmation, the page still warm when I slipped it into a folder labeled Identity. The new documents started updating. License, bank cards, work records. Soon, nothing would carry the name my family had forgotten on purpose. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't send messages. I just lived. But silence echoes when people expect noise. The first wave came in an email forwarded by my company's human resources department. Your emergency contact tried to access your file, the subject line said. My old phone number was disconnected. My old email was archived. My file flagged them as unverified. The system locked them out automatically. Another wave arrived the next week. The apartment manager from Seattle left a voicemail on my work phone. "Your family has been trying to contact us for your new address. We cannot share it without your written permission." I didn't give any. A month later, I turned on the old phone I kept in a drawer. 91 missed calls from my mother. Dozens from Amber, some from Marcus, one from Dad. Each voicemail grew more frantic than the last. "Where are you? This isn't funny. We need to talk about the graduation. You're making this bigger than it is. You can't just disappear. This silence is immature. You owe us an explanation." I owed them nothing. I turned the phone off and put it back in the drawer. The air felt lighter. Then came the moment everything came together. Great Aunt Kay passed away quietly and peacefully. She was one of the few people who ever truly saw me, and I knew I had to go. Not for my family, but for her. The chapel in Denver looked exactly the same. Polished wood, soft lighting, air thick with the scent of flowers. I arrived early and sat near the aisle, hands folded around the printed program. The name on it, Hannah Cole, was still strange to my family, but it felt right to me. They arrived together. My mother stopped walking when she saw me. "You changed your name." It wasn't a question. It was blame. My father's jaw clenched. Amber stared in shock. Marcus looked like someone had knocked the wind out of him. Their eyes went to the program, then to me, then back. "You should have told us," Mom said quietly. "You should have shown up," I replied calmly. She opened her mouth to argue, but the chapel attendants signaled for silence. During the service, they watched me more than they watched anything else. Every few minutes, Mom's eyes slid toward me. Confusion, anger, something like fear. The same fear people feel when a map they knew has been redrawn without them. After the final song, she followed me outside. "Hannah, this isn't fair," she whispered. "We made a mistake. Families move past things." I stood by my rental car, the soft wind moving the edge of my jacket. "You chose a cookout over my doctorate," I said. "You didn't forget. You chose." "That's not true." "It is," I said. "And now the systems I exist in only recognize people who show up. You weren't listed. Everything else handled itself." Her face changed as the truth finally landed. There was no argument she could make to undo a court record, a state file, a digital identity. Love could be claimed, but paperwork didn't care about guilt. Amber came over next. "You didn't have to go this far," she said. "I didn't go far," I answered. "I went where I was seen." Marcus didn't speak at all. I got in the car, closed the door, and watched their shapes blur through the windshield. They couldn't follow. Not legally, not digitally, not emotionally. The life tied to my old name had ended without ceremony. The one tied to my new name had already begun. And for the first time, the loss wasn't mine. Boston settled around me the way a soft evening settles around a cooling street. Quiet, unhurried, peaceful in the gentlest way. Months passed, and the rhythms of my new life formed themselves without effort. I walked to work under gray skies. I made coffee in the small kitchen of my apartment, the sound of water filling the silence instead of breaking it. On my desk, drafts of water cleaning projects spread across the wood in careful lines, lit by soft morning light that made everything look calmer. Slowly, the stillness stopped feeling strange. My name, Hannah Cole, appeared on emails and memos, on project files. Each time I saw it, something inside me settled a little deeper. At meetings, colleagues asked for my thoughts without comparing me to anyone else. After work, a coworker would invite me for coffee, or Tom would meet me at a small cafe tucked between two brick buildings. He listened. He remembered things. He asked about the ocean water project I had been working on for years, and he didn't fake interest. He showed it. Some nights I would sit on the balcony with a blanket around my shoulders, the city humming softly in the distance. Rain traced lines down the railing, steady and unbothered. I thought about the empty chair at my presentation, the one I had stared at for a long moment before I started talking. The image returned sometimes, but it had changed. It wasn't painful anymore, just a memory, small and flat, like a photo tacked at the back of a drawer. I didn't hate them. That surprised me. Hate required weight, and I no longer carried theirs. The paperwork had done something I never could. It carved a clean line. Not a wall, just a boundary. On one side, the life where I waited to be chosen. On the other, the life where I didn't need to wait. When I left the courthouse months earlier, I hadn't been running from my family. I had been walking toward myself, toward a name that belonged to someone who showed up for me, even when nobody else did. Now, in the soft rain of a Boston evening, I realized something quieter than forgiveness, simpler than closure. I wasn't missing anymore. I had arrived. Boundaries aren't punishments. They're proof of where you finally learned to stand. My family spent years forgetting me in rooms I worked hard to enter. So I built a life in a place where showing up mattered. Now, when I sign my name, Hannah Cole, the silence that follows isn't empty. It's mine. And some doors stay closed simply because I no longer need what's behind them. If this story touched you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. You never know who might need this message today.